Part 1, Move-in Day. Scene 1, Arrival. Glasgow, January 1, 2027. The van took the corners like a hearse. Declan Fraser sat belted in the back, one hand resting on the metal frame of his chair, the other dead from the elbow down. He could feel the tremor of the road through the chassis, each crack and pothole a small electric pulse through the spine that still half belonged to him. The city outside was not Glasgow as he remembered it. It was quieter. The snow had fallen black with soot, and the streetlights hummed with a dull, non-human tone, as though their filaments were gasping for breath. He hadn't seen the driver's face since the hospital gates closed behind them. Just the gloved hands, pale leather tightening on the wheel, and a DLC patch stitched on the shoulder of the uniform, Drummond Locke Corporation, the same company whose logo had burned on the side of the submarine before it exploded. He tried not to think of that. Instead he looked out through the condensation on the window, the words the nurse had whispered replaying under his breath like a prayer: temporary housing, Mr. Fraser. Quiet, accessible. 7 days of monitoring, that's all. It sounded like kindness at the time. They passed the Clyde, frozen solid now, and for a moment the glass reflected his own face instead of the river, skin too pale, mouth slightly open, eyes still trying to look like a soldier's. Behind him, the medical gear rattled. The oxygen mask hung unused, swinging with the movement of the van. At last the driver slowed. The road narrowed into a tunnel of dead trees and concrete. Ahead, the building appeared like something dredged from the seabed, Caledonia Court, a great U-shaped monolith rising 33 stories, its windows dull and lidless. The floodlights along the perimeter blinked in irregular intervals, like slow heartbeats. The sign at the gate read, in peeling gold letters: Caledonia Court, luxury living since 1983. Someone had crossed out luxury with red spray paint and written burial instead. Declan's pulse stumbled. He could almost feel the building watching him, every window an old eye, every balcony a mouth stitched shut. The van stopped. The driver got out wordlessly, opened the back, and began unloading the wheelchair ramp. The cold air sliced into Declan's lungs like tin. It had that industrial taste, the kind of air that hadn't moved in years. The man helped him down, gloved hands steady but distant, as if touching him might contaminate something. At the door, the driver handed him a thin envelope. No words, no signature. Just a DLC seal pressed into wax. Declan cracked it open with his thumb. Inside was a keycard and a single printed line. Welcome home, December, year the 33rd, only one leaves. He looked up, mouth dry. The driver was already gone. The van idled for a moment, headlights burning white against the snow, and then reversed into the mist until even the engine noise disappeared. Declan sat there, in the silence, feeling the building breathe around him. It was not imagination, there was a pressure in the air, a faint rhythmic hum that felt almost cardiac. He wheeled forward, the gravel crunching like brittle teeth. The main doors hissed open before he touched them. Inside, the air smelled of rust, bleach, and something faintly sweet, like decaying fruit. The lobby was vast but bare. A mural covered the far wall, a woman in a hard hat shaking hands with a man in a suit, both smiling under the old DLC logo. Time had bled the colors out until their faces looked waxy and corpse pale. Under their feet, in faded letters: Together we build tomorrow. Declan's wheelchair echoed on the tiles as he moved forward. The place had the hush of an abandoned chapel. No security desk, no human presence. Just an elevator at the far end, its doors slightly ajar, light flickering inside like a dying bulb. When the doors closed behind him, he caught a reflection in the metal, his own face, but not quite. The eyes too dark. The expression unfamiliar. He pressed the button for floor 1. The elevator stuttered once, then began to move, not up but sideways. His stomach rolled with it, the old submarine vertigo returning. The speaker above him crackled to life. A voice, clipped and polite. Good evening, Mr. Fraser. We hope you find your stay restorative. The accent was Scottish, educated but sterile, like an imitation of warmth. Declan swallowed hard. Who's this? No reply. Just static that shaped itself, for a second, into what might have been a laugh. The doors opened on 01A. He rolled into a corridor that smelled faintly of seaweed and metal polish. Each door he passed was identical, brushed steel numbers, no handles. The air seemed too thick, as if the walls had absorbed years of breath and were exhaling it slowly. His flat was the last on the right. The keycard chirped, the door slid open. Warmth hit him. Artificial, humming. He hesitated before crossing the threshold. The floor was carpeted in a faded tartan pattern, the kind that once belonged in council flats and childhood memories. A small dining table stood in the center, already set, a plate of meat, raw lamb, still glistening, and a glass of red liquid that wasn't wine. Steam rose from the plate. Beneath it, embossed on a metal plaque. Welcome home, December, year the 33rd, only one leaves. He stared at it until the words began to blur. Then he turned, half expecting someone behind him. The door had already shut. Silence filled the room like water. He wheeled closer to the table. The meat was still twitching, faintly, as if reacting to his breath. He reached out with the good hand, the one that still obeyed him, and touched it with a fingertip. It was warm, warmer than human skin. The smell wasn't right. Too clean, too sweet. Something between antiseptic and blood. He pushed the plate away, the sound echoing in the empty flat like a gunshot. On the wall hung a mirror. His reflection trembled, distorted. Behind his own head, for a single moment, another figure stood, tall, dark, featureless. Then it was gone. Declan spun his chair toward the hallway. Nothing. He told himself it was pain medication, the nerves firing wrong again. But as he sat there, the ceiling light dimmed of its own accord. The air pressure shifted, like the breath of something enormous behind the plaster. And then he heard it. From the ceiling above, a woman's voice, low, cracked, furious. You left me to burn, you bastard. Then silence. He waited for the echo to fade. It didn't. Instead, another sound began, the faint creak of a bed frame, the rhythm of two bodies moving, the whisper of a man's voice answering hers in tones too low to decipher. Declan gripped the arms of his chair until his knuckles whitened. He was alone on the first floor. There shouldn't have been anyone above him. He looked toward the ceiling vent. The air was breathing again. Scene 2, Apartment 01A, Exploration plus the Echoes. Night, January 1, 2027. The silence had a weight to it. Declan felt it pressing against his ears, a dense, invisible fog. He wheeled toward the hallway light, flicked the switch, nothing. The bulb pulsed once, then died with a sigh. Only the faint, bluish spill of moonlight filtered in through the window blinds, striped across the tartan carpet like prison bars. He took a slow breath, half expecting to taste salt or soot. Instead, the air was stale, warm, with that metallic tang of hospitals and shut rooms. The kind of place where breath had no business lingering. The meat still sat on the table. No longer twitching, but now glistening under a thin film of condensation, as though it were cooling flesh. The plaque beneath the plate seemed to shimmer faintly when he wasn't looking directly at it. You're the 33rd. Only one leaves. He ignored it and rolled into the living room. The place was furnished like someone had watched too many real estate adverts, pale oak furniture, plastic plants, an outdated flat screen with a DLC logo burned faintly into its lower corner. Dust on every surface, except one spot, a perfect circular patch on the wall, clean as a coin. The wallpaper there bulged slightly, as though hiding something behind. Declan leaned forward in his chair, touched the spot with two fingers. The wallpaper was warm. He froze. Somewhere inside the walls, a hum began, low, steady, mechanical. The sound vibrated through his ribs, like an engine waking in a ship's belly. He tried to pull back but found his hand wouldn't move. The wallpaper clung to his skin, damp, elastic. Jesus Christ! He tore it free. The wall released him with a wet snap. When he looked down, his fingertips glistened with something dark and clear, not blood, not glue. It smelled faintly of ozone. He wiped it on his trouser leg and backed away, heart thudding. The hum subsided, retreating into silence again, as though satisfied. He glanced at the mirror on the opposite wall. For a second, he thought his reflection was gone. Then he realized it was simply lagging, moving a fraction of a second after he did, head tilt, blinked, breath. It smiled a heartbeat later. Declan turned away. He wheeled toward the kitchenette. The fridge door was ajar, the light inside flickering in time with the pulse of the ceiling fan. Inside, no food, just a single roll of undeveloped film and a note scrawled on receipt paper. Do not look up after midnight. He closed the fridge. From somewhere above, a soft thud. Then another. Like footsteps, slow, measured, pacing the ceiling. He checked the digital clock on the counter. 11:54 p.m. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, the only sound was the faint static hiss of the flat screen, though it wasn't on. Then a voice came through the static. Not from the TV, from the building itself. From the vents, the pipes, the walls. A man's voice, low, controlled, almost kind. Welcome to Caledonia Court, Mr. Fraser. The others are adjusting to your presence. Declan spun his chair toward the speaker on the wall. Who the hell's talking? No reply. Only that low hum again, like something mechanical breathing through the ducts. Then, faintly. Don't stay up too late. Tomorrow repeats. The line went dead. He sat there, jaw clenched, staring at the mute television. Tomorrow repeats. The phrase stuck, like a splinter under the tongue. He wheeled toward the window and pulled the blinds open. Outside, the courtyard was buried in mist. Street lights glowed behind it, their halos trembling like underwater lamps. 33 floors of black windows faced him, identical, uniform. Every curtain drawn. But then, a flicker. On the 17th floor, one window glowed briefly red, then went dark again. Declan leaned closer. For an instant, he thought he saw movement behind the glass, a figure pacing back and forth, too tall, too thin. Then the reflection shifted, and the image disappeared into the fog. He shut the blinds. His pulse was a metronome in his ears now. He wheeled himself back toward the table, planning to call the nurse, to demand transport back to Glasgow Royal Infirmary, to anywhere but here. But the phone on the sideboard, the one the nurse had given him, was gone. In its place lay the roll of film from the fridge. It hadn't been there seconds ago. He stared at it. The plastic casing was warm to the touch. When he turned it over, he saw 3 words scratched faintly into the side. Develop or disappear. A low laugh echoed through the air vents. Not human. Declan's breath caught. He glanced up, just a reflex, toward the ceiling. The plaster above him bulged, faintly, as though something massive were pressing against it from the other side. For one impossible second, he saw fingers imprinting from inside the concrete, dragging slowly toward the vent. He froze. The clock clicked over, 12 a.m. A faint pop echoed through the flat, like a fuse blowing. Then, nothing. No hum. No whisper. Only the meat on the table, still glistening, and the distant, rhythmic creak of the bed upstairs, repeating every few seconds like a metronome. He whispered to no one, "Who's up there?" The ceiling answered with a single word, whispered back through the vent in a woman's broken voice. You. Scene 3, The Loop. Morning night, January 2nd, 2027. Declan woke to the sound of dripping. Not the steady sort from a tap, but uneven, hesitant, like someone thinking between each drop. He lay still, eyes half open, trying to place the rhythm. It wasn't water. Too thick. Too deliberate. When he rolled his head, the clock by the bed read 7:14. The exact minute he'd checked it yesterday. The digits pulsed once, faint static around their edges, then steadied. He reached for the blinds. Outside, the same milky fog. Same parked van by the gates, still flashing its hazard lights, though no one sat inside. Even the gull frozen on the railing below, same angle, same bent wing. He muttered to the empty room, "I'm dreaming." But his breath fogged, and he felt the ache in his back where the chair had pressed all night. Dreaming didn't hurt like that. The fridge hummed in the kitchen. Something metallic clattered, a knife maybe, falling against tile. He wheeled through, slow, cautious. The table had been reset. The same plate, the same twitching meat, raw and pink, blood pooling in a perfect circle. The note beside it had reappeared too. Fresh ink. You're the 33rd. Only one leaves. He stared until his eyes watered. The letters shimmered faintly, as though still wet. He touched the paper, cold. Solid. Yesterday's note had burned when he'd tried to destroy it. The ash had marked his hands. But his palms were clean now. He flipped them over, almost disappointed by their ordinariness. He opened the fridge. The roll of film was there again. The note taped to it, identical, "Do not look up after midnight." He laughed, a dry, hollow sound that startled him. Fine. Let's test it. He scribbled something new on the back of the receipt, "This is day TWO," and taped it to the inside of the fridge door. Then he sat at the table, waiting. The hum in the walls returned, faint at first, then steady. The wallpaper trembled where he'd touched it last night. The warm patch was back, perfectly round. Declan's hand hovered an inch from it. The air there pulsed, like the breath of a living thing. He whispered, "What are you?" The hum stopped. From the ceiling above, the soft thud of footsteps, the same rhythm as before. He waited for the shout, the fight, the breaking sound that had followed yesterday. But this time there was nothing. Just pacing. He wheeled into the hallway. The elevator doors at the far end were open, though he'd seen them rusted shut yesterday. The inside glowed faintly, pale green. He rolled closer, cautious. The control panel was dustless, freshly polished. The buttons gleamed like new coins. The UP light blinked. The building breathed once, or maybe that was him, and he pressed it. The doors closed. The lift began to rise, smooth, silent. The floor indicator lit up one number at a time, 2, 3, 4. Each floor chimed softly, a note lower than the last, until by floor 6 the tone was almost inaudible. When it stopped, the doors opened onto an empty corridor. Wallpaper identical, lights humming. But the air felt different, thinner somehow, like he'd climbed a mountain. A faint tang of bleach, of burned dust. He wheeled forward. Halfway down, he stopped. A shape on the carpet, something small, curled, pale. He leaned closer. It was a note, folded into a square, edges stiff. Inside, "Don't go higher." The handwriting was his. He looked back at the lift. The doors were closed. No call button. Just smooth wall. He stayed very still, breathing through his nose, tasting metal on the back of his tongue. Somewhere far below, something heavy fell, a door slamming maybe, or a body hitting the floor. The sound traveled up through the bones of the building, soft as thunder. Declan wheeled toward the stairwell. The door was ajar. Cold air spilled through. He pushed it open. Concrete stairs spiraled upward, endless, identical. He stared up and caught the flicker of light, fluorescent, too regular for daylight. A voice echoed faintly from above. His own voice. "Don't go higher." He froze. The echo wasn't delayed, it predicted his thoughts, half a second early. He backed down the first few steps, breathing hard. The hum returned, not in the walls now, but inside his head. A frequency he could feel vibrating behind his eyes. He clamped his palms over his ears, but it was no use. The sound wasn't coming from outside. When he opened his eyes again, the stairwell was gone. He was back in his apartment. Same light. Same table. Same plate. The clock read 7:14. He blinked, once, twice. A full loop. He rolled to the fridge and flung it open. The note was gone. The roll of film gone too. Only the faint imprint of tape residue where he'd left his message. Declan sat back, dizzy. Through the wall, the voice came again, the calm, measured tone from the speaker. "Welcome to Caledonia Court, Mr. Fraser. The others are adjusting to your presence. He whispered, no. Not again. The voice smiled through static. You'll get used to it. Everyone does. Declan's hand shook on the armrest. Who are you? Silence. Then, softly, you've asked before. He wheeled to the window. The same fog, the same gulf frozen on the railing. But now, on the opposite building, one window curtain moved. Slowly, deliberately. Someone, or something, looking back. He tried not to blink, but when he did, the curtain froze again. He turned away. His reflection in the window lingered, a heartbeat late, smiling faintly after he'd stopped. That night, he made notes. A notebook from the drawer, ruled paper, pencil stub. He wrote every detail, time, smell, the color of the sky, the temperature. He marked the hum, the voices, the sequence of events. Then, beneath it, in small block letters, remember your name. When he looked again, his handwriting had changed, smaller, more precise, almost mechanical. The last line read, too late. You're already repeating. He dropped the pencil. The sound of pacing began again upstairs, same rhythm, same weight. Then came the voice through the vent, whispering downward. You. Declan exhaled slowly. I know. He sat in the dark for a long time, counting the beats between each creak in the ceiling. Each one perfectly timed. At midnight, the clock reset to 7:14. Part 2, the broadcast. Scene 4, the broadcast. The sound came just after 3 in the morning. A pulse through the concrete. A low, breathing hum that seemed to rise from the radiator rather than the walls. Declan woke to the vibration before he heard the voice. The mattress was damp beneath him again, sweat and condensation fusing into one cold film. He blinked toward the ceiling, that heavy, off-white stippled ceiling he'd stared at for 3 days now, and waited for the room to remember itself. There were no clocks in Caledonia Court. Time was measured in hums, drips, and the slow fatigue behind his eyes. Then the voice. It began as a clearing of static, the kind a radio might make when a frequency locks in halfway. Male, Scottish, dry, but not human. The vowels seemed to drag slightly, as if some syllables were being rebuilt on the fly. Rule of the cleansing, 33 souls. 7 days. Declan flinched. The voice came from the corridor speaker, but its echo also rippled through the pipes, as though the building itself were mouthing the words. Day 7. One becomes warden. The rest become hollows, forever. He sat up, his legs inert beneath the blanket. The wheelchair stood against the far wall, shadowed by the streetlight that filtered through the half-closed blinds. Dust moved in the beam, a slow, vertical drift. It was almost beautiful, the way the particles caught the amber light. Almost enough to make him forget the rest. He rubbed his temples. The same phrase repeated, calm, instructional, utterly without emotion. Rule of the cleansing. It was the cadence of an announcement he remembered from childhood, bus terminals, ferry docks, stations before the city banned the tannoys. A voice intended for nobody in particular, and that made it worse. He pushed himself upright, slid onto the chair, and rolled toward the hall. The door opened on its own. Every night it did that, sometimes breathing open an inch at a time, as though the hinges inhaled. The corridor was long and windowless, the fluorescent light stuttering in uneven intervals. Water ran inside the plaster. Somewhere above him, pipes tapped like a soft metronome. Declan called out, voice cracking. Who's there? Nothing. Only the speaker hissing, cycling back through the same phrase, a little slower now. Rule of the cleansing. He rolled forward. The tires whispered over the linoleum, leaving 2 thin wet tracks. Each door on the hallway bore the same embossed plate, DLC property, restricted occupancy. None had numbers. Just faint outlines where numbers had been scraped away. Halfway down the corridor, the power dipped. The fluorescence guttered out. Darkness folded over him. Then came another sound, not from the intercom this time, but from inside the walls. A sigh, low and granular, like sand moving through an hourglass. He whispered, Saoirse, though he knew her floor was much higher, and that what spoke to him the night before had not sounded entirely alive. The speaker clicked. A burst of static, then the voice again, closer, louder, almost warm. You were here before, Declan. The air froze. His throat felt wrapped in frost. You built this place. He tried to turn the chair, but one wheel snagged on the seam between tiles. The voice continued, steady, factual. You left yourself instructions. But you keep forgetting. This is the 7th cycle. Stop, Declan said. His voice was too small, swallowed by the hallway. He gripped the rims of the wheels until his knuckles whitened. The lights flickered back on. Every door was slightly open now. He could see just inside the nearest one, an empty flat, wallpaper peeling, furniture covered in dust sheets. But on the table, directly facing the doorway, stood a black rotary phone. Its receiver hung loose. A single red lead pulsed where the dial should have been. He rolled closer. The lead blinked in rhythm with his heartbeat. Not real, he murmured. Just another loop. He reached out, touched the cold bakelite. Immediately the speaker crackled again, this time in stereo, from every flat on the floor. A chorus of hollow speakers all carrying the same voice, slightly out of sync. 33 souls. 7 days. You're the 33rd. He let go of the phone. The red light faded. The silence that followed was worse, heavy, pressurized. He felt as though he'd gone underwater. A soft mechanical chime sounded somewhere deep below, a lift descending. Then another voice layered itself beneath the first, almost like a memory replayed in the wrong key. Day 3, test subject FR, static, audio loop verified. Declan's chest tightened. He knew that timbre. It was his own voice. Recorded, distorted, reporting something. The corridor began to vibrate gently. The fluorescence burst with a heat that smelled faintly of burnt dust. He turned the wheelchair, half expecting to see someone behind him. No one. Just the open doorways, each leading into an identical void. He moved toward the lift. The floor trembled slightly, as though the building were breathing deeper. Inside the lift shaft, blue emergency light seeped upward like gas. The display above the doors didn't show numbers, only the letter A blinking in slow rhythm. He pressed the call button. It depressed too easily, like pressing into flesh. For a long moment, nothing. Then the speaker directly over the lift whispered, barely audible through static. The walls remember you. He wheeled backward. The words weren't threatening, exactly. They were factual. Clinical. That was what made them horrifying. He could smell something faint, copper and heat. The same scent that came right before the explosion on the dock 7 years ago. The memory arrived unbidden, the flash, the sudden upward drag of air, the sound of steel giving way. He hadn't felt pain then, only brightness. The same brightness that now pulsed behind his eyelids. He opened his eyes. The corridor had changed. The fluorescent lights were gone, replaced by bare bulbs strung on cables, swaying slightly in a breeze he couldn't feel. A film of condensation coated the walls, and beneath the sheen he saw writing, names, hundreds of them, etched in something that wasn't paint. Each name crossed out except for his. Declan Fraser, 33. He reached out. The letters were raised. Warm. From far down the hall came a mechanical groan, the sound of steel dragging over concrete. Then footsteps, too slow to be human. He spun the chair, heart hammering, and caught movement at the corner where the hallway bent. A figure, translucent, walked toward him with the stillness of a photograph. No face, only a faint suggestion of eyes and the mark of an old safety goggle cracked in half. The broken lens emblem. The DLC logo. It lifted its head slightly. From its chest came the same voice, now inside out, reverberating from bone instead of speakers. You're the 33rd. Declan backed away, the wheels slipping on the wet floor. The figure stopped 3 meters away and tilted its head, mimicking him. When he froze, it froze. When he breathed, it breathed. A perfect mirror, stripped of detail. Day 4, the voice said. The broadcast is complete. The fluorescent light above them burst. Tiny glass rain fell across his shoulders, glittering in the half-dark. When he blinked again, the figure was gone. Only the wet floor remained, marked with 2 sets of tire tracks, his own, and another that curved away toward the lift. He listened. The building had gone quiet again. Only the distant drip of pipes. He wheeled himself back toward his flat, hands trembling on the rims. At the threshold he paused. The speaker inside his unit clicked one final time, and the voice returned to its calm, bureaucratic tone. Sleep well, Warden Fraser. Declan didn't move. The radiator hissed behind him, releasing a long breath of steam. Through the blinds, the faintest grey dawn began to leak in, the kind of colourless morning that never quite decided to become day. He looked at the floor, at the faint circle of water his wheels had traced. It was almost perfect. A loop. He closed the door. And the speaker, still on, whispered something too quiet to catch, syllables that might have been help, or hello, or just the building exhaling the memory of language. Scene 5, The Hunt. It began with a hum. Not from the lights, they had already gone out, but from the walls themselves, vibrating like the skin of some buried animal trying to breathe. Declan pressed his palms against the wheels of his chair and felt the faint tremor running through the metal rims. It pulsed at a steady rhythm, 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats, another pause. The same rhythm as a heartbeat, only off by half a second, enough to feel wrong. The stairwell door at the end of the corridor banged open, once, then again. Footsteps, no, more like the sound of shoes without bodies inside them, moved downward. Declan tried the joystick on the electric chair, the motor whined but didn't engage. The battery light glowed red. Dead again. He whispered into the dark. Anybody there? The echo came back in a voice that wasn't his, anybody there? Then softer, closer, there. 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 Declan locked the wheels, pushed himself upright. His legs were numb to the knee, but the pain above that was enough to feel every grain of dust against his skin. He took the crutch from the wall, the one the DLC nurse had left, just in case. Its rubber tip stuck to the floor with each slow step toward the stairwell. The humming grew louder, vibrating the door handle. It wasn't fear that held him, it was recognition. He had heard this sound once before, deep in the Clyde shipyard, a week before the explosion. The sound of pressure before rupture. He opened the door. The stairwell descended in a dim spiral, amber light flickering from somewhere far below. The air smelled metallic, almost sweet. He could hear the elevator cables shifting, breathing like wind in a tunnel. At first the steps seemed empty. Then, as his eyes adjusted, he saw the shapes, 30 or more of them, motionless on the landings. They had the outlines of people but no detail, as if drawn in charcoal and left half-finished. Their heads tilted toward him in unison, and he saw the faint shimmer of the DLC insignia, the cracked lens, burning on their foreheads. He thought, not ghosts. Not people. Maybe something between. Then one of them moved. The sound of its hand dragging across the railing sent a shock through him, bare skin against corroded metal. He started upward, fast as his ruined legs would carry him. The first touch came before he reached the second landing, a brush of cold against the back of his neck. For a second nothing happened. Then he felt a pressure behind his eyes, like a memory slipping out through the skull. A name, his mother's, evaporated before he could form it. He kept climbing. Another hand grazed his shoulder. He forgot the color of her hair. By the time he reached the 12th floor, he was sobbing without sound. The shapes followed without hurry, perfectly synchronized, like figures in a slow procession. Each step seemed to erase something small, the smell of salt air from childhood, the taste of whiskey, the sound of his own laughter. His identity was thinning, memory by memory, until only the act of climbing remained. He found a door on the 14th landing. Maintenance only. The lock was rusted. He hit it with the crutch until the hinge gave way and stumbled inside. The room smelled of damp paper and ammonia. Old monitors lined the wall, dead screens facing him like blind eyes. He shut the door, pressed his back against it, and listened. The humming had stopped. So had the footsteps. For a moment he thought he'd outrun them. Then a sound came from the ceiling vent, a slow exhalation, followed by a voice, flat and male, stretched thin by static. Rule of the cleansing, 33 souls. 7 days. Declan froze. The words matched the broadcast from last night, but the tone was different, softer, almost human. Day 7, one becomes warden. The rest become hollows forever. He stepped toward the monitors. They flickered once, twice, then came to life, grainy black and white feeds from every floor. Stairwells, corridors, abandoned flats. In each frame, a hollow silhouette stood motionless, its head tilted upward toward the camera. Then, on the bottom right monitor, he saw himself. Not in the maintenance room, but in a hospital bed. He was thinner, unshaven, face covered in tubes. The wall calendar read 2027, but it wasn't this building, it was Glasgow Royal. Machines surrounded the bed, blinking in the same rhythm as the walls of Caledonia Court. 3 beats, pause. 3 beats, pause. He reached for the screen, his palm trembling. The image fussed, but didn't vanish. Somewhere behind him, metal scraped on concrete. He turned. The door was opening slowly, without a hand on it. Through the narrow gap he saw nothing, only the corridor beyond, bathed in pale green light. Then a single hollow stepped into the threshold. This one had more shape than the others. The number 17 was carved into its chest, bleeding darkness. It moved like a marionette in water, head jerking, limbs lagging behind the intention. The cracked lens symbol pulsed faintly between its shoulder blades, syncing with the hum of the monitors. Declan whispered, "What are you?" The figure tilted its head, as if listening to a distant echo. When it spoke, its voice was his own. "You." The door slammed. Every monitor went white. The hum became a roar. Declan staggered back, covering his ears. The room seemed to expand, walls stretching away, floor turning liquid beneath his feet. He thought he felt hands again, many hands, lifting him, pressing memories back into his head, but in the wrong order. His father's voice speaking through his own mouth, Zisha's laughter replaced with static. He bit his tongue until he tasted iron and used that pain as an anchor. The light cut out. When he opened his eyes again, he was sitting in his wheelchair on the 21st floor landing. The crutch was gone. So was the maintenance room. Only the dark stairwell remained, and the faint glow of the number 21 painted on the wall in drying blood. He couldn't remember how he got there. From somewhere above, the architect's voice whispered through the ventilation shafts, close enough to feel its vibration in his teeth. "Climb, Declan. The others are waiting. Don't keep them hungry." Then silence. Declan looked up the stairwell. 32 figures stared down from the railings, one per floor, their shapes trembling in the flicker of failing light. They didn't move. They didn't need to. Each was waiting for him to climb. He put his hands to the wheels and began to turn them. Each rotation echoed like the winding of a clock. Somewhere, far away, the heartbeat rhythm began again. 3 beats, pause. 3 beats, pause. Until he could no longer tell if it came from the walls, or from inside his chest. Scene 6, Betrayal. Declan woke to the sound of the lift breathing. It was a long, mechanical sigh that seemed to come from the walls themselves, a wet exhalation that carried the weight of trapped air, dust, and a faint metallic sweetness, like blood drying on a radiator. He thought at first it was the wind, but the sound kept time with the flicker of the emergency light above his head. Inhale, exhale, flash. The corridor around him shivered with condensation. He had fallen asleep somewhere near the stairwell, one floor beneath the roof, after hours of fleeing the faceless shapes that moved like memories. Now the building was quiet again, too quiet. Even the humming of the old pipes had flattened into a single low note. He pushed himself upright. His palms left wet marks on the concrete. His breath came in short, frost-tinted bursts. Day 6, he thought. Though time here didn't mean much. Clocks bled backward. Radios repeated. The lights never changed color, only dimmed and rebrightened like a pulse. And yet, someone was singing. A woman's voice, soft, almost conversational, drifted down from above. It was the sound of someone singing not to be heard, but to remember. My body lies over the ocean. Declan froze. His throat tightened, the way it had in the hospital when the doctors told him they'd be taking what was left of his legs. Saoirse used to hum that song when she was nervous. On the drive to the shipyard. In the weeks before Helmand. Even the vowels, low, wounded, matched her Escher lilt. He followed the voice. The stairwell opened into a hall he didn't recognize. The wallpaper here had peeled in long, symmetrical strips, revealing brickwork scorched in the shape of human shadows. Someone had arranged folding chairs in rows, as if for a service that never began. In the center sat an upturned television, its screen filled with static and faint, upbeat-like pops of sound. The singing stopped. December. He turned so fast the world lagged a moment behind. She stood in the doorway, half lit by the amber glow of a dying filament bulb. For a moment, a single, dizzy moment, she looked alive. Her hair was shorter, darker, her eyes were the same green-grey as the Clyde on an overcast morning. But the skin around her collarbones was wrong, puckered, blistered, as if burned long ago and never healed. Her voice trembled like it had distance in it, like it was being broadcast from somewhere deep underwater. "It's you," she whispered. "Christ, it's really you." He didn't move. "You're not." "I am." She stepped forward, one hand raised as if to soothe him. "I've been watching you since the first day. The court won't let me speak too long, but tonight, the signal's weak. We can talk." The air between them thickened. The smell of ozone, faint, electric, filled his lungs. "What are you?" he asked. She smiled, but her lips didn't quite move in time with the words. "Saoirse. You're Saoirse. Or what's left of her." Declan laughed once, dry, unbelieving. "You're another loop. Another trick." "If I were," she said, "you'd already be screaming." The static from the television flared. Behind the white noise, the architect's voice whispered, too faint to parse, but unmistakable in rhythm, the clipped precision of a Glasgow-born engineer long dead. Declan turned to the sound. When he looked back, Saoirse had crossed the floor. She knelt in front of him, her fingers trembling as they touched his face. Her skin was cold, not corpse cold, but the kind of cold that came from somewhere inside the bones. "I tried to warn you," she said. "Back when the sirens started, before the gas. They told us it was just an evacuation drill. You wouldn't leave the shipyard, said you had one more weld to finish. The blast took half of us before the air even caught fire. I don't remember." "You will." He shuddered. "Why now?" "Because you're almost at the top. And once you reach it, you won't remember anything at all." Her tone hardened. "That's what they built this place for, memory harvest. The higher you go, the more of yourself you leave behind. By the time you reach the control room, you're nothing but a vessel." "Vessel for what?" Saoirse leaned close enough that he could smell the faint iron on her breath. "The next warden. They need someone to take over. That's why they chose you." He pulled away, shaking his head. "No. I didn't choose this." "Neither did I." The lights flickered. The air rippled with low-frequency distortion, a tremor that made the walls quiver like muscle. Saoirse's outline blurred, the edges of her body seemed to stutter, flickering between solid and transparent. "You're fading," he said. "They are pulling me back." "December, listen." She grabbed his wrist. Her grip was desperate, childlike. "There's a way out. Down on floor 1, beneath the lifts. The furnace room. If you can reach it before midnight." The sound of the lift doors opening cut her off. It came from the far end of the corridor, a soft metallic slide, followed by a hiss of pneumatic release. The temperature dropped by several degrees. Saoirse looked over her shoulder. "They are early." A shape moved inside the lift, tall, backlit, indistinct. Its face was a mask of light. The number 17 flickered on its chest, carved in shadow, glowing faintly like a wound. Declan froze. "Go!" Saoirse shouted. She pushed him toward the stairwell. Her body seemed to disintegrate with the effort, skin, fragments of ash scattering like snow. He stumbled through the doorway. Behind him, the sound of the lift filled the hall, that same terrible breathing. Then a scream, thin and mechanical, like feedback through a broken speaker. Declan didn't look back. He descended 2 floors before his strength failed. He collapsed against a railing, chest heaving. The metal was warm beneath his palms, almost pulsing. Below, the stairwell curved endlessly down, spiraling into a darkness that shimmered faintly, like water under streetlight. He tried to remember Saoirse's face, not the ghostly one, but the living one. The way her eyes creased when she laughed. The way she used to hum while fixing his shirt collar. But the image wouldn't form. It was as if someone had reached into his mind and smudged the memory with a thumb. He closed his eyes. The hum of the building deepened, not mechanical now, but human, almost breathing in sync with him. Vessel. The word echoed, uninvited. He opened his eyes to see the corridor ahead of him glowing faintly red. A low voice spoke from the loudspeaker mounted in the ceiling. "Good evening, occupants. This is your architect speaking. Cleansing cycle complete. New parameters initialized. Declan Fraser, confirmed." The sound made the air tremble. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. "Proceed to level 33 for final integration." Declan's mouth went dry. From somewhere above, he heard the echo of footsteps, dozens of them, perfectly synchronized, descending. He turned and saw shadows moving across the upper floors, faceless silhouettes, each one limned by the same faint number burned into their chests. They moved with mechanical grace, their limbs too steady, their silence too absolute. The hollows were coming. He pushed himself forward, dragging his ruined legs, half crawling along the wall. His reflection followed him in every window, distorted, doubled, blurred. As he reached the end of the corridor, he saw a door he hadn't seen before, steel, with a DLC insignia burned into it, a cracked pair of glasses inside a circle. Beneath it, words etched deep into the metal. "Warden access only." He pressed his hand against it. The surface rippled like skin. Behind him, the loudspeaker crackled again, and this time, the voice was not the architect's. It was Saoirse's. "You'll have to choose, December. Up or down. But either way, you're already home." The door opened with a sigh. Declan stepped through. The hallway beyond was lined with CRT monitors, hundreds of them, all showing the same image, a hospital room, a body lying motionless under fluorescent light. His body. Tubes in his throat. Machines hissing softly. He reached toward the nearest screen. The static swelled, drowning the image. And through the noise, faint but unmistakable, came her voice again, broken, pleading, distant. "Don't wake up. They need you here." The lights went out. Part 3. Scene 7, Ascension. The elevator doors sighed open at midnight, a tired, hydraulic exhalation that felt almost human. Declan stared at the black mouth of the lift shaft, where the cables trembled like veins beneath the concrete. The call button still glowed faintly, a jaundiced halo under the grime, though he hadn't pressed it. Somewhere above, a motor hummed like a low organ note, and the floor beneath his wheelchair vibrated in answer, as if acknowledging his permission to rise. He hesitated only once. The corridor behind him was a ruin of shadow, lined with apartment doors that now resembled tombstones. From each one seeped a thin thread of sound, a cough, a whisper, a laugh too familiar. The hollows were quiet tonight, but their silence had weight. The building itself felt poised, its breath held. He rolled into the lift. The doors closed with an almost gentle finality. Inside, the mirror had cracked across its center, splitting his reflection in two. The top half still looked human, eyes too wide, unshaven jaw, sweat streaking his temple. The bottom half, warped by the curve of the fracture, belonged to someone else entirely, a face pulled thin and calm, almost serene. A smile hovered there that he didn't recognize. The panel above the buttons flickered once, then stabilized on a single number, 33. The ascent began without sound. The shaft groaned softly, cables whispering. With every passing floor, the fluorescent tube overhead dimmed, casting the cabin into a pulse of amber-green half-light. Declan watched the floor numbers blur and vanish, 12, 18, 23, until the display was just static. He felt lightheaded, as though rising through water. At first he thought the air was thinning, but then he realized it was thickening. Each breath carried the taste of copper and ozone, like breathing inside a machine that remembered blood. The hum in the walls deepened, merging with his heartbeat until he could no longer separate the two. When the lift finally stopped, there was no sound of arrival, only the faint click of the panel extinguishing. The doors parted. Level 33. The corridor stretched in both directions, impossibly long, lined with steel doors that looked less like apartments than vaults. Each one bore a nameplate, some scorched, others neatly engraved, Fraser, Lennox, Kerr, McRae. He wheeled forward. The air was still, the kind of stillness that follows great machinery shutting down. Somewhere deep in the walls, a fan turned once, like a dying breath. At the corridor's end waited a single open doorway, bleeding pale light. He entered the control room. The space was circular, windowless, its ceiling ribbed with iron girders that curved inward like the skeleton of an eye. Dozens of CRT monitors stacked along the walls flickered with static and fragments of faces. He saw his own among them, sleeping in a hospital bed, eyes darting beneath their lids, chest rising shallowly. Another screen showed the courtyard below Caledonia Court, frozen in 1983, children on swings, a man lighting a cigarette. Yet another showed Saoirse, smiling faintly, though her body was smoke. Declan's fingers clenched on the wheels. "You've climbed far enough," said a voice, neither male nor female, filtered through static, soft, and terribly polite. "Welcome to the observation deck, Warden Fraser." He spun the chair, searching. No one. Only the monitors shifting, rearranging themselves like vertebrae. "I'm not your warden," he whispered. His voice sounded thin, almost detached. "I just want to leave." Everyone says that, at first. The intercom speaker crackled, and the screens blinked in sequence, as if the voice were traveling through them. The faces multiplied. He saw Tam's burnt silhouette. Granny Morag's grin. The flick of 6 phantom cats weaving between shadows. Leaving is not the end. It's just another entrance. A faint sound drifted from behind him, not footsteps, but the dragging of something soft across metal. He turned. The doorway had vanished. In its place was a wall of glass, opaque with condensation. Beyond it, shapes were moving, dozens, hundreds, all standing upright, still as statues. He wheeled closer. It was a pyramid, built from bodies, 3,332 of them, he would later realize, though in that moment they seemed infinite. Each face upturned, eyes shut, mouths half open as though still mid-prayer. Their skin was paper-thin, veins glowing faintly green under the light that seeped from the ceiling. At the pyramid's apex, a single empty chair waited. "Sit, Declan." The voice came from everywhere now, vents, monitors, even the floor beneath his wheels. He tried to reverse, but the chair rolled forward of its own accord, smooth as if on invisible rails. The pyramid pulsed faintly, exhaling a dry wind that carried the smell of dust and candle smoke. As he neared the top, he recognized faces, neighbors, strangers, echoes of himself in younger forms. He stopped inches from the empty chair. It was made of bone, polished white, fashioned from ribs and femurs welded with wire. On its backrest, the cracked lens insignia was carved deep, glistening like wet glass. Declan reached out a hand. The surface was warm. The moment his palm touched it, the screens flared to life. Images cascaded across them, blueprints, maps, hospital readouts, fragments of his voice recorded over decades. Cycle 6 complete. Warden transfer initiated. His own signature scrolled endlessly across a contract dated 1984. "No," he breathed. "That's not me. It always has been." The glass wall dissolved. Air rushed in, cold, filled with the whisper of thousands inhaling at once. The pyramid began to stir, the bodies shifting, tilting their faces toward him like flowers to light. Their eyes snapped open, blank, milk white. Memory is mercy, the voice intoned. To remember is to rule. He tried to rise from the chair, but his legs, or the idea of them, would not respond. He looked down. The wheelchair beneath him was gone. In its place, the bone throne had folded around his body, fusing at the arms and spine. He screamed, but the sound emerged through the speakers, distorted and distant, echoing through every floor of Caledonia Court. Monitors flickered. On one of them, his hospital self stirred, eyes opening. The same scream shuddered from both mouths, then merged into silence. A final line of text appeared on the central screen. Welcome back, Warden Fraser. Cycle 7 of 33 complete. 26 cycles remaining.